So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, my friend, Mark Morgan.
I appreciate the opportunity tonight to talk to you, and I'm going to talk, since I'm still currently an Army officer, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Combined Arms Center in Fort Leavenworth and what we do. So just show of hands, does anybody know everybody knows Fort Leavenworth exists, right? But do you really know what we do up there? Yeah, you do, yeah. But most people in the Kansas City area do not understand that, and they don't know, and that's okay, and I flipped it the wrong way. But first, I want to talk about this picture here. I am very proud of the service that my family has given to this country. Both my grandfathers served in World War II. I go visit them every March 2nd, my birthday, particularly my grandfather Morgan, whose headstone is there. My other grandpa is buried in Arkansas. But those two gave everything they had for this country, right? And we owe everything to that generation of of Americans for what we have today, right? They've given us the right to continue fighting for what we believe in. They've given the world to continue fighting for what is right. So I give everything to that man right there. The other pictures are my brothers and sister, or my brother and sister. My dad served. My brother John retired as a Marine Staff Sergeant in 2015, and my sister Rachel she joined the Army and has served for 5 years as an Army signal officer. I'm still in. I've outlived all of them, or outdone all of them, but that's okay, because it's the only thing I know what to do, right? My desire to serve this country drives me every day. It drives my wife crazy, but it drives me to be a better person, better American every day. And I hope that inspires others to do the same. Okay, so a little bit about Fort Leavenworth. It's a small post, probably one of the smallest in the Army. There's only about 5,000 soldiers there. What do you think we're most known for? The prison, that's right. The United States Disciplinary Barracks, all right? Little bit of what happens there, but there's a whole lot more, and a whole lot more important stuff that goes on. But first, let me introduce you to our leadership. So the old man here, Lieutenant General Martin, probably one of the best officers I've ever met, right? He too was an enlisted soldier, not a enlisted Marine. And I failed to mention that part because it was already said for me, but I'm very proud of my Marine heritage. I carry around my vial of Iwo Jima sand every day, courtesy of Doc Pushka here. I never let this out of my sight. Always remember my heritage and where I came from. General Martin, he's got a great story too. His father is a Korea-Vietnam veteran, right? Was an OH-6 pilot in Vietnam, but started out as an infantryman in Korea. Was at the Chosen as a soldier, not a Marine. And that story is amazing. Someday he'll tell it to the world, and it'll inspire you. But General Martin has served for 36 years, right? 62 years old, does not want to give it up. I don't have that desire to continue serving at that age, right? But how he does it, it's a drive that all of you in this room have had at one point, right? But it keeps driving him every day. Sergeant Major Helton's still a young man, right? He's only 40, I think he's 49. But he's moving up. You may see him as a Sergeant Major of the Army one day. But they drive what we do here at Fort Leavenworth. Their main priority right now is our recruiting efforts. All services, we're all struggling with the recruiting mission right now. 50% recruiting missions right now. So Chris Collins, our local Army Recruiting Battalion commander, we are constantly trying to figure out ways to help with that. But it is a struggle for all the services right now. There's just not a desire to serve. So when we talk about the inspiration, the desire, the willingness to serve, right? Everybody's tired because our youngsters are tired of hearing about 20 years in Afghanistan, 11 years in Iraq. They were born during that time, most of them, right? They just don't have that desire. So how do we inspire them to serve? That's that's our number one mission right now. We're not USAREC, we're not the U.S. Army Recruiting Command, but we have a big part in that. And that's Sergeant Major Helton's one of his big things. So how do we do it? Well, we focus on three things. For you service members, you kind of understand this: material, people, and then our concepts. And a big part of what we do is we write the Army's doctrine, okay? And we also write joint doctrine with the Marine Corps, the Navy, and the Air Force, right? What does the Army have to say about Air Force? Well, they support mostly us when they do their missions. The Marine Corps has their own air assets. The Army has mostly lift assets, but we are changing the doctrine back. For those of you old guys that know, remember the Air Cav concept as part of the Air-Land doctrine. Some of that's coming back, right? And we're changing things, and I'll talk about that as we go forward as we move towards the Army of 2030. But people is what we're mostly focused on right now, because of, number one, we can't get the people. Two, it's being able to retain people. A lot of guys are getting out. I mean, I'm headed out next year. September is it for me. 34 years is enough. My wife's ready to move on and do other things. The moving's old, and it's hard on the family. So those are the kind of things the Army's thinking about. We're also thinking about, it's not the wokeism stuff that you hear about, right? Although we are caught up in some of that, right? We're a microcosm of society to an extent. But we do want to change the culture in the fact that we care about each other. I mean, I remember when I was a young buck in the Marine Corps, my first sergeant told me, if I want you to have a wife, the Marine Corps would issue you one. And that's really how they thought, right? They believed that. And divorce rates were through the roof in all the services. Well, we're trying to change that culture, right? That's one thing. It's taking care of families, better hospitals, better medical care, right? It's not free, right, which a lot of people believe. We just pay for it all up front. It's taken out of your pay at the very beginning of the year. A lot of our civilian partners don't understand that, right? They think we get everything for free. That's not true, right? So it's that knowledge that we try to share with them. But for us and our families, it's about making life better, right? And so that's where we focus on the people. You may have heard about the new initiative there for female soldiers to get pregnant. There's a lot more considerations for them instead of forcing them to come back to work quickly, right? Not kind of in line with what we're seeing in the civilian workforce, but it's a retention tool. And we've seen a little bit of dividends there. Everybody's important in the U.S. Army, U.S. Marine Corps, U.S. Navy, U.S. Air Force right now. Never been more important than now, okay? So that's what we drive on. So just a little bit about CAC. We are not just at Fort Leavenworth, right? We got 9 centers of excellence. They're basically, I'll show you a map here towards the end. Every AIT, IET base, initial entry training base, or advanced individual training base that the Army has, General Martin is responsible for, okay? I serve as his G1. Half the time I'm his chief of staff, okay? I've learned more about this kind of stuff than I ever thought I could fathom. It's a hard fight. 37 schools. Every school that any soldier goes to, and a lot of the Marines go to, they come to an Army base to do it. Fort Leonard Wood is a prime example of that. Engineer MP. And there's one other, the chemical schools there. All the services send their service members that do those MOSs there. So we are a big part of the joint effort, okay? And then it's 500,000 soldiers a year. That's just on our side. That doesn't count all the sister services. And then we also are responsible for civilian education. There is civilian education in the Department of Defense. We are responsible for that for the Army. In fact, that's what brought me here. I taught civilian education to our GS employees, and it was probably at that time the most eye-opening job I've ever done, and the most fulfilling job I'd ever did. Running the streets of Mogadishu was fun, but doing that was even better watching our civilian teammates, their eyeballs light up when they understood that we in uniform care about you, and you are a member of the United States Army. So great job. International students. So CGSC, Command and General Staff College, all the majors come from the Army here for that, or the majority of them do, and our sister services. But the big part, the most exciting part, is all the international students that come. Yes, we have soldiers come from Iraq, right? Before this stuff started happening, we had Russian soldiers there, right? Russian leaders, Russian majors, senior captains. Of course, they're not here anymore, right? Things like that. A lot of the South American countries send their folks here. We have schools at Fort Benning where they all go to too. So every one of these schools you will find an international student at. Okay, and then we have a $4 billion operating budget. Sounds like a lot of money, but it's really not when you're operating all these installations across the world and the country. All right, so what do? We're responsible for the education, training, and inspiring the force by stewarding the profession. Stewarding the profession is what we call in the Marine Corps camaraderie. I still love that about the Marine Corps. I talk about it every day, right? Camaraderie is everything. That's what we're talking about with stewarding the profession. Developing leaders, we do that through our PME, primary military education. That's the CGSC, all the schools that all the soldiers and service members go to. And then driving change, okay? Driving change is really about us updating doctrine, making doctrine more relevant, make it important in what we do now. We're learning lessons from Ukraine that drive this point home even more so now than in recent history, okay? The way we fought in Afghanistan and Iraq is not going to work in the future. So that's what we're talking about. And we do that by harping on the physical readiness of our leaders, right? We're going to go back to that. We've changed our PT test. It's actually easier, I think, I would say, than the previous APFT. There's more events, but it's actually, I think, easier and a lot more fun. And then helping people understand the danger that the world is in right now, okay, and to be able to endure that hardship. We do that in our PME and our classes that we give, okay. All right, so talking about steward the profession, we'll talk about these three. It's the care for people. That's what we're really talking about when we talk about stewarding the profession. I talked about some of the initiatives that are already ongoing across the Army. There are many, many more. It's not just about promotion, right? Although that's what we all want because it's more money. But it's really about taking care of each other and enabling each other to build that camaraderie that we're looking for. Trust and cohesion. We're really talking about, so my opinion, we are no worse off in the sexual assault, sexual harassment arena than our civilian organizations, right? It's just we are trying to do something about it, right? We're trying to combat it, right? That's what we're talking about. It's hard, right? Because we can try all day long to identify those that might do it, but you can't do anything to them until they actually do it. And then it's too late, right? So how do you combat that? Well, it's the awareness piece. It's the leaders looking at each soldier in the face, each member of their team in the face, asking them how they're doing. How you doing, Tim? And just that gentle gesture, you may get something that's important that lets a leader know that, hey, I got a problem. I need to look into this a little bit further, right? Sexual assault is no joke, right? And it's rampant in the military. But I truly believe we're no worse than the rest of the world. It's just we try to do something about it. That's what we're talking about, okay? And then fostering those traditions in history. All services have them. The Army has them too. I've never seen it better than in the Marine Corps, but the Army has theirs too, and we really want to push that to build that sense of belonging in our service. Okay. All right. So We'll talk about institutionalizing a career-long assessment. So it's all part of the new education system that all services are trying to foster across their forces. It's the new way of learning, right? So it's not just a box of books, right? It's not in college where you would go to the bookstore and get a set of books. It's all online, right? So there is a big push to that, and the COVID crisis pushed us towards that. A lot of our students did everything online. That's how we continued, because we can't stop. We couldn't stop because of that. We did stop for about a 6-month period being around each other, but we had to continue the training, right? DOD is always going to be one of the first lines of defense, the last to go in, but we always prepare like we're going to be the first going in. So it never stopped. We just did it differently. Well, that's now inculcated in the way we're going to take this going forward. A lot of virtual stuff, hybrid versions of our classes versus all in person. We call resident. Okay, so that kind of stuff. Modernize the professional military education. So taking that doctrine that's being developed, sharing it with our young leaders who are going to carry it forward for us and make it successful. Learning that pays huge dividends, right? So I'll talk about air-land battle and where we're at now and where we're going. But the dividend is that, so our Vietnam partners, you lived the air-land battle doctrine, right? That lasted all the way up to Desert Storm. Okay, and it was after Desert Storm they decided we need to update our doctrine. That was the last time we've actually updated. Was in the mid-90s, right? It took till 2022 to actually start updating the latest version, and it won't be ready till probably 2029, 2030. Okay, so that's how long that takes to do this, and then the training goes along with that. So we changed the way we do training to accommodate the new doctrine. We're responsible for that. And then informing and learning, that's the AAR process, but taking that to another level, okay? So some of the ways we're doing this, so Project Athena, that's the way that we're taking assessments, right, and using that at all the different levels of school, in this case an officer, what they go through from beginning to end. They do an assessment, a self-assessment and a peer assessment at every step of the way, and it helps them with their self-awareness and their leader's assessment of them to make them a better person first, leader second, okay? So this is what we're going to do to drive change. MDO is multi-domain operations. That's where we're going. That's our new doctrine, right? The Marine Corps is going through the same thing. You've probably heard about the Marine Corps getting rid of artillery. Well, they haven't totally gotten rid of artillery. They've just changed some of that. They're going to have tubes and HIMARS now, so rockets. Because the Russians, that's their primary method of fire now, is rockets, right? So if you're within range with cannons of a rocket battalion, you're going to lose, right? So we had to develop that same, and we've been doing this for long years. We had MLRS in Desert Storm, for those of you who remember, but this is a whole new level of rockets. If you were watching in 2014 when the Russians first took over the Donbass region, they were annihilating Ukrainian battalions with this rocket artillery, right? I mean, just completely annihilating. We have to be able to counter that. That's what this is. That's the kind of stuff we're talking about with our new doctrine, right? And then develop the force that's able to employ this new doctrine, right? It's the way we train. It's going to require different people to be able to do things, and then establishing that campaign of learning so it never stops. Okay, that's what we're talking about. So air-land battle in 1986 lasted up until Desert Storm. We really started looking at full spectrum operations after that. We changed that doctrine. 2001, September 11, 2001, kind of stopped that, put that on hold for a while. We went into the COIN counterinsurgency fight that we saw the majority of the time in Afghanistan and in Iraq. Okay, and some of our Vietnam brothers, very, very familiar to what you guys endured, very, very similar. And then we started calling this thing called Unified Land Operations, which we're kind of figuring out how we wanted to modernize. Well, that's gone now. Now we're talking about multi-domain operations and even further large-scale combat operations, right? So that's countering the Russians on the Eastern Front, the folded gap concept. That may not last because of what we're seeing over in the Ukraine right now. But we always got to be adaptive and agile enough that we can change to whatever it is we need to do. That's what multi-domain operations gets after. We're part of TRADOC, so people and doctrine, and then this new organization called Army Futures Command, right? So it's part of TRADOC. They develop these long-range concepts that eventually turn into or don't turn into a concept that we actually take forward and inculcate in our doctrine, right? A lot of big thinkers, big dreamers, but they work hard at what they do, okay? And that is all to fight. We say 2035 on the slide, but we're really looking at 2030, not that far away. We include, so CAC is, like I said, includes Fort Leavenworth, but it also includes 9 other installations. On CAC itself, we've got these 3 organizations, Command and General Staff College, which is the one we're most known for, and that's the majors going through school. But we also have this organization called Combined Arms Center Training, who's led by a 1-star, and he's responsible for all our combat training centers and the doctrine that's associated with those training centers and the multi-domain operation stuff that I was talking about. Mission Command Center of Excellence, also part of that, but it is a separate organization within CAC. They have a lot of the high-tech pieces of this, right? So it's technology and training that enables all this. They work on that technology piece. Here's where we're at. So even in Germany, there's a CTC over there, and then in Kuwait as well, we have an establishment there, okay? So coast to coast, and then over in Europe and in Southwest Asia. Like I said, we educate and train. Those are the populations we primarily educate and train, our majors and sergeant majors down at Fort Bliss, Texas. That's where the Sergeant Major Academy is. Very, very important for our senior NCOs to get through. All right. We're also responsible for the junior soldiers and leaders that I talked about. That's what this talks about. All the way down to our brand new soldiers, right, from the lieutenants and the privates. That's what we're really getting at. All right, so General Martin's a huge Twitter guy, as most of the generals are getting social media savvy now. I'm not ever going to be one of those. Not my thing. But he always puts this up for people to photo that QR code. And if you're interested, he is a very, very intellectual, very, very smart, and can tell this story better than anybody I know. So that's there for your use. And then just some of his Twitter feeds, right? He's all over the place. He's very involved in the community here. He's constantly with the mayor of Kansas City and Missouri and Kansas City, Kansas, helping tell our story. And he attends many of the events, not just at the World War I Museum, but all over the city. Okay, and then this is more for soldiers. This is how we're able to keep up with everything. This site here, Army Leader Exchange. All right, enough about that stuff. Let's talk about you guys. Guys like me can't be in our positions about successful members of our community like you, right? What you gentlemen and ladies have done to foster this nation is the most important thing to us, okay? You inspire us, you drive us, and you make us want to be better. Don't ever stop, don't ever give up, don't ever give up. I salute you. Okay.
I wondered if you might share with the group any lessons that perhaps you learned from one of your grandparents and their experiences that you've carried on with you in your Army career?
But the day I found out that he was a Medal of Honor winner was I think it was June 12th of 1988. My dad was in the Air Force. We were stationed at Offutt Air Force Base, and they had a reunion. Believe it, my dad did not tell us about this. They had a reunion at Offutt. They brought in all the crew from his bird that were still living. Keith Koski, Campbell, Robert Campbell, and several others. I can't remember all their names, but there was like 8 of them, right? And the B-17 had a crew of 10. The only one that didn't make it back from the war alive was Robert Campbell, the pilot. But that was the first time I knew about the Medal of Honor. And I tried to take stock of what that meant. I didn't really know much about it, and my dad never talked about it. But I asked him, my grandfather, about it that night when we got home, and I asked him, what is it? What does that mean? I understand it's a big deal, but when he told me the story of what happened and how he did that, that's what inspired me to join the Marine Corps, right? I wanted to go in the Air Force and be a pilot just like him, but that just wasn't possible at the time, so I joined the Marine Corps. He came to my graduation from boot camp at MCRD San Diego, and it was the second proudest moment of my life. The first was when I married my beautiful bride. That was the first until I met her. The pride in his eyes that day when I graduated were they keep me going today. But his mission. So it was June 4th of, I think it was 43. They were on one of the first daylight bombing raids over Berlin, deep bomb missions. For those of you that understand World War II history, Americans were doing the daylight bombing. Initially, it was just along the coast of France and Belgium and Netherlands. Kind of hit the coast of Germany, but we weren't really going all the way into Germany at the time. Well, and the Brits were doing the night bombing. Go back. My grandfather was a Lancaster pilot for the Brits before the 8th Air Force was stood up in Europe, and they pulled all the Americans. He wasn't the only one. There were thousands of them that were flying for the Brits before they pulled them back to the Army Air Corps and stood up the 8th Air Force. He flew 20 missions with them before he got pulled back. He ended up flying 25 and a half for the Army Air Corps. But that mission, he got shot down. It was the first daylight raid over Berlin. They got hit. They were the Pathfinder aircraft, meaning they were the lead airplane. They got hit, got frontal attack. Robert Campbell, the pilot, got a bullet through a 20-millimeter shell through his skull, and it came across my grandfather's side. He was the co-pilot, through the side screen, across his face. He said he heard it. He never saw it, and it hit Robert Campbell in the right temple. Didn't kill him, crazed him. He still was trying to fly the plane. My grandfather was navigating, setting the airplane up for the bombing run, and Robert Campbell was flying the plane, and he got hit. All hell breaks loose, obviously. He didn't know if the oxygen system and intercom systems got knocked out, and they had no crew idea what was happening to the other 8 members of the, for all Grandpa knew, he was the only one alive, and trying to hold off Robert Campbell from flying the plane. So he had to make a decision. They had an engine knocked out too. This is what he was given the medal for. He kept the airplane in formation, never dropped the bombs, obviously, but stayed in the formation, made it all the way back to England. It was 2.5 hours later when they made it back, holding Robert Campbell off with his left hand arm and flying the plane. And the fact that he brought 7 of the other 8 home. What he didn't know was in the back, Keith Koski was the top turret gunner, got his right arm shot off at the shoulder. The crew that was still conscious in the back tried to stop the bleeding. They couldn't stop it, so they put a chute on him, packed it in his good arm, and threw him out the bomb bay. That was all they had back then, to try to, that was their only hope for his survival. And he did. He survived the war as POW, and I met Keith Koski at this reunion. Ira Eaker put the Medal of Honor on my grandfather and told him, "You're done flying. You're going back to the States. You're going to go on the," you've all heard about the War Bond Tour. They send them, heroes back, and they go and they travel the country and trying to raise money and all that good stuff. He did not go back. He flew, that was on his third mission. He flew 22 and a half more and was shot down over Barth, Germany on March 6th of 44 and become a POW. To this day, the only living POW, or the only living Medal of Honor winner to become a POW after they were awarded the medal. He didn't talk about that very much because that was not a good news story. But the fact that he survived was. And I sent Paul some pictures, and it's not in here, but Grandpa was a jokester, and he, like many POWs, they would do anything they could to find a way to make it through the day. And his thing was to make alcohol, ferment, the vegetables and stuff, fruit that they would get, and they would feed it to the guards, and they would get drunk. And the sad part about that was the guards liked him, so he said, but the night before that camp was liberated, he was due to be executed because of that, and the Russians liberated Stalag Luft 1 in Barth, Germany, where he was at, and he survived because of that.